Hi, I'm Loraine Prokopiou. I'm a physiotherapist and Pilates instructor. I recently spent quite a bit of time with a client who was an instructor herself and just wanting to work through how the springs set when you first get your brand new tower. So I've got the springs all laid out here and I'm going to talk about those a little bit later. But all of this would relate to whether you have the reformer like this is set up. This particular one is an Align-Pilates A8 Pro reformer, and then we have the tower attached. If you've got a Cadillac, this would work for that, although you would have your tower at each end, as it were, so the springs could go either end. Or you would perhaps have a wall-mounted unit against the wall and working from the mat on the floor. So all of these things would be the same relevance. So as you're working in the studio, you may well find that springs are changed quite often, especially as you're working with clients that have particular needs, that you might want a lighter spring or a heavier spring. And so when you come in, you'll be faced with your tower set up with springs and you may not be quite sure where you want to go. So I want to take this little moment just to go through all the springs that you have with your setup and how they work in the more classical sense of working through Pilates with our roll down bar, with the push through bar and all of that. So I've got all the springs, I've stripped the tower down completely and we've got all the springs, safety straps and the loops all laid out right here, ready for action. So before we even get started, I think it's worth just having a little think about which way round your tower sits. So you can have it this way round with the holes facing forwards and then so that you adjust by pulling out here and sliding up or down, or you could have the tower completely the other way round so that these knobs, actually I'll do it up here, would look like that. Now it kind of depends on your setup really. If your towers are pushed quite up close to a wall, having this way round would make it quite difficult to make those changes. Whereas if it's this way round, that makes it much easier. And if your client is having to do the changes, this might be the easier option as well. The one thing I'm not super keen on with this, because you've got the knob and the loop at the same point, is when I take the spring and pop it in, this is slightly in the way. It's perfectly doable, but it's just awareness, and in some ways it's just a case of getting used to that. So that's just something to think about, and you need to be aware of that in your own particular setup as you're working through. The other thing just to point out as well, if you're wanting to spring something from quite low, the other thing you want to think about is that you'll have or a pair of these little loops that'll come with your set of springs. You can either have it this side, so the loop would be here, so you could have a spring attached quite low here, or you could have it on the other side. Now the reason for choosing to have it on that side would be if you were working that side of your tower. Yes, I hope that makes sense. So if you've got a nice space on the back side of this tower, it is really nice to do some work standing on the floor and using those low loops to spring your springs from that low position. So in this situation, we haven't got those set up here, so I'll just take that one out and we'll pop this one off to the side. Okay, so those are your options there with the two ways around you have your tower. If you get it set up and find you don't like it that way and you want it switched, it's relatively easy to do. You just take out these grub screws, pick up the whole thing, turn around, pop it back in, grub screws back in. I think that's probably a two-man job though, so think about that before you start undoing your grab screws. All right, so I'm here looking at all my springs laid out in front of me, and we're going to start trying to set that tower up in a kind of classical way, if you like. So I'm going to start with the blue springs that I have here that will come as your set in the box. And just thinking about all of the springs, you have a carabiner at one end and a double clip at the other end. The carabiner goes up to the tower, so I'll take that up here. I'm going to pop this up onto the top loops here, and I'm going to work with the push through bar first. So these will usually, and I say usually because things change and you can change it however you want, but it's just aware that you have a start point and then you can move on from there. All right, so I've got the blue springs attached to these two loops here, and then I'm going to swing the push through bar up and attach these. Options again, you can attach on the inside. Now the reason there's an inside loop is so that the spring doesn't touch this edge so much. Some people don't like that against the edge. I find it a little awkward in there, so personally I tend to do this and just make sure I don't push the bar too far through. So this is quite light with the single spring for working some of your push through stuff. Kneeling here, it's okay, but it's quite, I don't know if you can see that, it's quite springy. So I would tend to do a lot of work here with the two blue on as I'm working through, and that gives me just a little more resistance to work through for the abdominals. Again, it would depend on the exercise you're doing, but those are your options there. So let's take these off. So that's the push through bar sprung from above. Then if we're going to think about using the push through bar sprung from below, we want to make sure we've got the safety strap in. So let's work that now. I'm going to take this safety strap off here. So the safety strap might be different from the one that something you've seen before. It's actually quite straightforward, but it can feel a little bit complicated to start with because you have the hooks on either end, and you have this kind of D-ring in the middle, and then you've got the adjustment clip here, which just slides in and out. So the way I think is I know I need that D-ring dropping down so I can hook the other hook into that. All right, so that D-ring is dropping down. I'm going to use the other end and hook it into this loop in the middle. Then I can bring my push through bar up and through. You're going to need to support the push through bar, and then I loop this long end up and hook in to there. And you probably want that set into the center so that there's less kind of torsion on the push through bar unit itself. Then you can adjust, of course, you can sort of take the weight. Sometimes I'll do that on my hip and then just give that a little pull just to get that up a little bit higher if you want. You would usually want it lower. So I'm going to take that all the way down just now. So looping up here. I'm sort of supporting it on my hip a little bit here. So I can set that down. I could probably just lift that up, make that a little bit easier. And then of course, once you've got it set at the height you want, make sure that's nice and secure then, that's not going to run out. So if we're springing from below, I'm going to need to move these loops down. So I'm going to do that now. So just scooting this down. I'm going to take that all the way down to its lowest notch. Same on the other side. Take this down all the way to that lowest notch there. And this, and again, you could use if you had that little loop that I was talking about earlier, you could use that notch in this situation here as well. Okay, so I'm going to use these blue springs again, taking these off. Don't want to. And then I've got one do here. And then, so make sure safety strap is on first, and then I'm going to attach these two blues. Okay, let's just make sure that's looped around. Good, all set. And then just lying down underneath the foot bar here. So I can work a little bit of chest work here. That feels quite nice. And obviously, though, because of the safety strap, I can't bring it any closer into my chest. So it is quite a small range of movement if you're doing that exercise. But of course, I'm nice and safe. It's not going to ping into my face if I let go. And then again, feet on here for your footwork if you're working that exercise as well. That's quite nice. The blue springs, I would say, if you're doing leg work, and if you do a lot of that, I would say that the blue springs are on the light side for this. So that's just something to think about if you do that a lot. But the two blue side by side work quite nicely there. Okay, so I'm going to take those springs, unhook those. And then again, it's nice and easy now just to take this strap off. I'm going to loop that around and then return this to there. I'm going to leave that there. And then we're going to come down and just move these springs at the bottom here. So that's the push through bar pretty much dealt with. So we're going to move these springs. So taking this one off, and we're going to start thinking about the roll down bar. So I'm going to take these springs up to where we would traditionally have it attached at the very top here on these two top loops. And then we are going to pick up your roll down bar, which has these two loops on it, and we will attach those to that. There we go. And then the roll down, nice and slowly, one vertebra at a time, hits the mat, and then rolling back up again. Now, I actually find, it's a bit of a personal thing here, but I find this quite strong for the roll down. Now, it'd be quite good for somebody that's heavier, so that's good, because it gives you that option. But my preferred option would be to make that a little lighter, so I could take this down to the lower loops there. So I've just got these slightly lower than the regular high position, and then I feel like I'm actually working my abdominals, controlling this back and up. So although these springs are assisting, I'm not fighting them. It feels good. It feels like I'm getting that work through the abdominals. Great, so that's that. I'm going to put these hooks, these springs, back up high. I'm just going to loop that round to have the roll down bar out of the way for now. And then we're going to come back down and think about the pair of yellow springs that you have. And generally you'll use these yellow springs for your arm work. So when you're doing a lot of the work on the reformer, sort of lying down, either feet in straps or using your arms in straps as well, you'll generally, as a general guide, you'll have the loop hooked around about shoulder, maybe just above shoulder height. So I'm going to adjust this one up right now. I'm going to pop it there. Good. And then I'll do the same on the other side. Coming up and onto there. And then again, so carabiner to tower. And then I'm going to grab my hand loops from over here. So it's just your handles like this. And the double clip takes the loop. And then I can do some nice work kneeling. It's a good position here for chest expansion work, or even lying down. So I'm just going to come down because I do want to just show something here as well. So we push the hands down, nice and easy, controlled, and I've got a nice bit of resistance. Now, of course, the properties of the springs, the more you stretch them, the stronger resistance you're going to get. Okay, so just to sort of be aware of that. And I can work a circle here quite nicely. This feels great. And then I'm going to take a rest there, pop those down. All right, so just notice what that looks like. And then I want to think about the purple springs. So those are the springs that we have left, the purple and the red. So your purple are sort of got double purpose, if you like. You could use those for your arms or your legs. So let's try that now. We'll switch out the straps. And what you can do as well for storing your springs, let's store these now. I can store them in these loops here. Okay, so grabbing, these are my purple springs. So again, we've got the carabiner end, and I'm going to attach same place here. Now I'm going to just show you something as well with the loops. So I've got the two loops here, and you've got an extra D-ring on the loop. So I'm going to use these loops in this, in the leg spring option. And then I'm going to make this quickly into a handle by pulling the D loop all the way to the end. I can loop it around and then have it in there. And I've just made that shorter and into more of a handle option. So I'm going to work with this now as I've got it set up like that. So let's do that on this side. So looping around and then just hook back into there. Okay, so let's have a look back at those arm spring work again. So this, obviously, now this one, the purple is a longer one. So you've got the short yellow that we just did those arm spring work in, and now this is the longer purple. Just trying to make sure I'm getting all that right. So you can see as I'm working here, I'm pushing harder into those springs to press down. It's a little stronger. I'm hoping you can see that as I'm working. But of course with the longer spring, it takes a little, once I come up, if I want to do a circle, I get that sort of looseness through the spring. But that is an option if you wanted to work your either work harder through the arms or have a longer spring option for your arm work. That's your purple option. Okay, I'm going to take these out now, so I'm no longer into a handle, I'm just into a loop. Now I quite like these as well, in that if you slide the loop up, it sort of manages to hook itself over the sort of the webbing and the stitching there, and it tends to hold there, which is quite nice because it keeps the D-ring out of the way when you get your feet in the straps. So let's try that now. Again, a start point would be that the spring is hooked onto the tower, onto the uprights here, slightly above the shoulder height. It's a good place to start, and then you can play around if you want to change the angle of pull. We'll work here. I'm going to come down and get my feet in straps. And this is a really nice position to work your leg work, up and around. And I can use my hands against the uprights here. Now, if this feels great, I really like this, and I would tend to use this for most of my clients, the purple spring. But if you're wanting to do magician work, which is where you come out into that spring, you can tell that's hard work for me. I've got to push against and lift up. I don't feel I've got quite enough resistance there. So this is where your red springs will come in. So let's change this around again. I'll loop these purples back up onto the back here. So this is my little kind of storage space. I'm going to take this loop off because I shall need it for the red spring. So just watch as well as you're taking things off. Sometimes that happens and then you've got uneven loops. So, and then you're missing a loop or missing a double clip. So just try and get into the habit of changing the springs the same way each time will make life easier. All right, back over the reformer I go. Grabbing these red springs, and you can feel as soon as you pick them up that they're a stronger spring, they're heavier. Hook that in, 1, 2. And then let's get these loops on. And onto the other side there. And then I'm back down again onto the reformer, onto the bench I should say. And then finding those springs. Oh yeah, that feels good. So that's strong now. This is great. And so if you've got a bigger guy, perhaps a stronger woman, wants to work those legs a little bit stronger, that is great. It feels a really nice, strong resistance. And I should be able to fly up for my magician work. So pushing out into the springs, keep reaching. Look at that, easy peasy lemon squeezy now. And back down again. Oh, that felt good. All right, releasing those down. Nice job. So now I have no springs left. Everything's up on the tower, ready to go. Good. So as I say, we've got all those springs set up now onto the tower, and those are all the springs that come with your tower or Cadillac or wall unit. But there are other springs and other options available if you wanted to get those springs that are stronger or lighter. So you could take a short red or a short green would be a stronger option if you wanted that for that push through bar from underneath. And obviously you've got all the combinations available there.